Hello, friends. I hope we're all doing well this week. I hope you had a great weekend. Just wanted to go over a few items from week 5 and then talk a little about week 6 and go over a couple quiz questions. So last week we continued our discussion of ethics, focusing in a little more on right to self determination, autonomy. Various issues related to that, religious rights, etc. So, some interesting discussion on that, and hopefully, as I had said in the announcement for this week. Hopefully, if nothing else, it gave you, pause to think about some of these things and how you personally feel about them. And then also, so important is if you haven't already, at least take some time to think about advance directives for yourself and for family members. We may not think that, even myself, I may not think that I may need anything like that anytime soon, but sadly, you never know when you're going to be hit by a bus, or you never know. You just never know. So it's really important that we take the time to have those advance directives on file and make your family, friends, whomever would be the one that would be there to help you if you became incapacitated. Make sure they're aware of what your wishes are. So, but even if they're aware of your wishes, like in the Shivo case, where it seemed that she had let her husband know what her thoughts would be, without that advance directive on file, it's really hard to there's always a battle over that, and I would hate to see. Myself personally, I would hate to be the center of a battle like that, so I wouldn't want to cause that kind of strife in my family or with my friends. Please take that time, consider the completing advance directives. Anyone's physicians, your primary care physician, should be able to help you with that. Definitely consider that. So let's talk about the quiz for week 5. I had 3 different questions that I wanted to talk about, but generally everyone did pretty well in the quiz, so there weren't a lot of questions to review. But I did have 3 I wanted to go through quick. First question is about informed consent. So, although hospitals are not generally responsible for informing patients as to the risks, benefits, and alternatives to specific procedures, hospitals, and then we have several answers. The correct answer is, in some cases, owe a duty to provide patients with informed consent. So typically, when you think about a hospital, the hospital is not the one performing the procedures, the physicians are. So if you're coming into a hospital to have a surgical procedure or some kind of a treatment, the physician is the one that has the duty to provide you with an informed consent, to give you the opportunity to make an informed consumer decision, both as a consumer of healthcare and a consumer overall. Is this something that I want to proceed with? I know what the risks are, I know what the benefits are, I know what my alternatives are, and then you go forward from there. But that's the duty of the physician or the provider. It's not the duty of the hospital to obtain that. But in some cases it is. So a good example is if you were to have some sort of let's say a scan in radiology where they had to inject you with contrast or with some other agent, some type of agent that can be seen, a dye, whatnot, or if you had to drink like barium. So those types of studies, any type of study in the hospital setting where you're coming in, and then it's not that you're having a procedure that a physician is performing, but you're being injected with dye or with some contrast agent or some radiopharmaceutical that is being done by the hospital. In those cases, they have a duty to inform you of the risks and benefits of the procedure as well as any alternatives. So if you were to come in and have a CT scan, for example, and maybe you weren't aware that the physician had ordered a CT scan with contrast or with and without contrast, or maybe you don't even know what that means, when you come to the facility, the radiology staff should be telling you, you're here to have a CT scan, and the physician has ordered that with contrast, or sometimes even they'll do a scan without contrast, and the radiologist will order contrast because they want to compare. So it is the hospital's duty to inform you of your risks and benefits, of alternatives, etc. for that procedure. If they don't, and you have some sort of an issue, you would have a right to action for a lack of informed consent. It is up to organizations to provide you with that level of informed consent. So generally, they aren't the people charged with getting consent for surgery or treatments, but in some limited instances they are. Second question. If the patient has been informed that without a blood transfusion she will die, she refuses blood, and the court orders the transfusion, the order is wrong based on the patient's right to what? And this goes back to our discussion of autonomy, or the patient right to self-determination. So we have as a patient right, if you looked at a list of patient rights, you would see that we have the right to make our own choices with regard to our health care, with some limited exceptions. If we are found to not have capacity, meaning that we aren't, and there was a lot of discussion in this past week's work about this, so I won't beat it to death, but generally there are several things that could impact our capacity. If we were unconscious, we wouldn't have capacity, but if we had some sort of developmental delay, developmental disability, that may avoid our ability to have capacity. Certain types of mental illness will take away our ability to have capacity, or maybe dementia, those types of things. So there are situations where that ability to consent on your own has gone away, and you need to have someone else assist you with that. Hence the things, the importance for advanced directives, healthcare proxies, etc. But generally, if a person is of sound mind, they are able to self-determine what they want and what they don't. And in this case, that patient refuses blood, and they the facility goes to court, unless in some way they could find that this person lacked capacity to consent, and didn't have someone else to consent for her, this patient right to self-determination would be in effect. Last question. The blank of 1990 provides that patients have a right to formulate advanced directives and to make decisions regarding their health care. So this was the Patient Self-Determination Act of 1990, and this was really when we first found, from a federal level, a solid right of ours, as protected by the federal government, to allow us to put in place an advanced directive, and to have that followed if we were to reach a point where we couldn't make our own decisions about healthcare. We are able to do that. We are able to self-determine our future in healthcare based on advanced directives. Now, the one thing that's important about advanced directives is that you need to follow, although we have this federal act that protects our right to do that, you need to follow, you need to follow the requirements for your state. So what is legal as far as an advanced directive in New York State may be different than what is legal in Pennsylvania. Now, typically, because we do have this federal protection, if you have advanced directives somewhere in one state or another, and the facility, from a legal perspective, doesn't have to rely on them, but they often will, just because you've got a legal binding document somewhere, and at least gives them some idea of what your wishes were. However, it is important that you, let's say, like me, for example, I lived in New York, we had a certain format that we had to follow, but now that I'm in Pennsylvania, I need to alter that and make sure that I have accurate advanced directives for the state that I reside in. If it's a place that you reside, it's important to have, to meet the requirements for that state. But the Patient Self-Determination Act of 1990 is what protects that right for us. So important piece of information to know. So this week we're going to kind of transition back over to the legal side of things. Although from a fraud and abuse standpoint, and fraud and abuse was kind of my bread and butter throughout my entire career. Actually, all of the stuff that we're doing this week, there really are ethical standpoints to it, because it's not ethical to defraud somebody. So there's an ethics side and a legal side here. But so we're going to talk about the False Claims Act, which is when we talk about fraud and abuse, that those are usually False Claims Act violations. And we're going to talk about Stark, as well as anti-kickback. So Stark is a physician self-referral rule. Anti-kickback is they're both Stark and anti-kickback are quite similar, but a little bit different. So I did have a couple of fairly decent videos to help explain those. The self-referral law is also known as Stark Law, is named after the the legislator that put it forward. We do have a traditional discussion board this week, a written discussion board, and I want everyone to go out and find a recent article for a fraud and abuse case. It could be False Claims Act case, could be an anti-kickback case, or a Stark self-referral case, but something recent within the last 5 years or so. They happen every day, so there's plenty of stuff out there on fraud and abuse in healthcare. They estimate, I think it's like $19 billion a year is being charged to the Medicare Trust Fund inappropriately. So there's certainly stuff to be found out there. Don't mind my husband's message up in the corner. Our online banking went down this weekend, and I don't think it's back up. So he's just asking about that. Also, we have an infographic due this week. So there's some info out here about how to complete infographics. These are some free sites that you can go to take a look at them. But I want you to create an infographic either about Stark, anti-kickback, or the False Claims Act. You can use any of these types. These are free resources, but the one in particular, Vengage, I know a lot of people like to use that because they have some nice templates to create an infographic. However, you can't actually save your file. You just have to upload your file to their community page and then send me the link to the file. So once you get in here, if you find you're having some issues, you should not have to pay for any of these resources. They are free. But the purpose of an infographic is to give a pictorial representation of what you're trying to say. So it might be by putting information in boxes and drawing lines and connecting, or it might be you actually find pictures that are affiliated with what you're talking about. The thing I would recommend is a lot of people just find all these medical pictures. So someone with a stethoscope, someone at a computer. That's not what an infographic is. A pictorial representation of what you're talking about. So I'm not just looking for a poster with clip art on it. I'm looking for that connection between the visual and what you're telling me. So it might just be info in boxes with connecting them, and you'll see the different templates out there on what you want to put together. But it's you're looking to create that pictorial representation of whatever information you're looking to share. So I think that's all I have this week. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you have issues with the infographic software pieces, they're all available online for free, like I said. But if you have issues, let me know. And look forward to hearing about all of the fraud and abuse cases you find throughout the week in the discussion. Okay, thanks so much.